Welcome to the Find and Follow. You just burped right before I started that. It's going to be hard to cut
He
out.
clapped, I laughed, and he burped.
It's a great start. Welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where we believe life is in the light, spiritual darkness is the enemy, and finding and following Jesus is the best way to live life. I'm Scott Langhans, your host, joined today by Snappy Tanner. Snappy Tanner.
Hi, I'm Tanner.
Tanner Decker's back on the podcast. It's been a few weeks.
It has been.
Good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
And Craig Langhans and Kyle Kingsley. We are all here, present, accounted for, ready to rock and roll today. Kind of.
Ready to go.
I had just like a kind of a bad morning.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, can I just lament for a
Sure.
second,
Go
real
for it.
quick here? So went to make the old cup of coffee. First thing in the morning, usually get a glass of water, get rolling, and then coffee's really fairly soon after getting up. And we've got a super automatic machine. Phil. We love Phil. It's a Philips brand, a Seiko Philips, and so he's a super automatic, meaning you put beans in the top, push two little buttons, and then espresso comes out. It's very, very lazy, but awesome.
So good.
Is this a shout out to our sponsor for this episode?
Dude,
No.
Phillips wants to sponsor us. I need to
Yes.
upgrade my extra small.
So he's a super automatic. So we call him Super Phil. Usually just Phil. He's like like a family member, and he like auto powers off, and you hear him. We're like, no, Phil, don't leave us. We need a third cup. You know. So, anyways, push the buttons on this morning, and you can hear the grinder grinding for about half of the grind, and then you hear like a bzzz because she be empty, and we
Ooh.
got 0 coffee beans. in the
No, I
house.
hate that.
Oh, no. It's a sad day.
That
That's
couch
tough.
over there is not. So then I try to
That's
go
tough.
tea. So Amy's like, well, we have tea. Tea
the
versus
same.
coffee. Where are you at on that, Craig?
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down?
Yep.
Would much rather have coffee.
As Kyle drinks
My
his coffee.
Phillips, made me two extra long shots. This
You have
morning,
Phil
so.
too?
I do have a Phil.
He's got Phil's older brother.
I got Phil's like grandpa. my Phil's not as sleek and fancy. A little more simple, but it still is a super automatic, so I can't complain. I have an espresso machine that's
It's very nice. Yeah. We geek out on coffee once in a while. Anyways, dropped the kids off at school. I was like, this is not going to work. A cup of tea is not going to kick it for today
way.
at
No.
all. So I went through the local drive-through that serves Doma coffee just down the street, and then brought one back to Amy because that's how I roll.
that's a good idea.
That's a good husband.
Because it was just life just not going to work on.
Is that the
you know,
one over by
cup
the
of tea.
landscape supply place?
Yeah.
Yep.
Was it any good?
What?
Was it good?
Oh, it's very good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I
With
went there.
one down-
I
just
drove
down Pines?
out of my way.
No, he's talking about in Post Falls,
Oh,
over
no,
by
no.
Just down
Highway
the street from my
41.
house.
Oh,
Coco
got it.
Pelli is the name of the place.
Hey, if they want to sponsor too, I mean, we're looking for sponsors.
Are we
Phil.
looking for sponsors?
I'll
I
take
mean,
some
we're always
sponsors.
looking
All right.
for sponsors.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, throw it out there. But man, and then as I was driving, drinking my coffee, here's my other lament, and then I'll be done on the coffee train. It spilled down my shirt.
Oh, no.
I was wearing a white shirt, a long sleeve white shirt. I am not currently. I have a green shirt that was underneath that, but it just was like brrr, down my shirt. I'm like, am I 4? What is going on?
One of the first, not one of the first. So when Tanner was first starting, and we'd get coffee a lot. I feel like at Kohl's, we don't do it as much anymore. I don't know. Maybe we need to do that again. And I went over, and I think I was on my way back from my text him. I'm like, hey, do you want coffee? I'm just swinging by. And he's like, yeah. Gives me his order. I get mine. So I get 2 coffees, right? I bring him into the square. I get out of my truck, and mine spills everywhere.
How did this spill?
I don't know. I was getting out of my truck, something on the floor everywhere. So I
Just
was
dumped
walking.
over in your car?
No, just yeah,
Outside?
it did all over my my floor mat
Oh,
and everything,
jeez.
just coffee everywhere. So I just walk in and I hand Tanner's coffee. I'm like, here you go, bud. And just walked away.
I didn't know that.
He didn't. I was like,
You didn't
here's
know
your
that.
This is the
coffee.
first time I'm hearing
There's
this.
I
your
don't-
coffee.
I don't have mine.
I'm going to go lick mine off the floor mat. Drink it as it drips out the door.
So that reminds me of a story, right? So I set my coffee cup on the step, the bumper step at the back of my pickup truck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And headed on down Sullivan. And I went a whole mile with it just sitting there until somebody finally honked and pointed, and I pulled over, and it was just riding along on the
That's
on the
a
bumper
testament
step.
to your
That's
driving
fantastic.
skills.
I'm saying.
Or
There's
the
nice
coffee
smooth
cup.
And then
drive-
there's
Or
the
the
other
coffee-
story where I
that's
set
true.
it on top of the cab
Yeah.
up at up in Rathdrum, and I was headed down the highway back into town, going 60, 65, and the coffee mug was up there for miles. And the reason that it stayed there was because it was hot and it was like really cold outside, so it stuck and froze to the top of
There you
the
go.
cab. So when
Wow.
somebody pointed it out to me, they went by and honked and flashed their lights. I pulled over and I couldn't even get it off of there because it'd been hot when I
goodness.
set it down, and then I forgot about it.
That's funny.
Man, how many people listening have done that? Put
Oh,
something
we've all got stories.
on top of the car, on the back, or
Oh,
if
I've
you have
lost
a-
several mugs.
Yeah, truck. You leave the tailgate down and something comes flying
Oopsies.
out.
Ooh.
I do that on the top of my car all the time, but at my house I park outside a lot, and we have a giant chestnut tree. And right now in the fall, I don't know if you've ever seen a chestnut tree. There's these giant spiky balls that the chestnuts are inside. So there's these little spiky pine coney balls all over my yard. It's ridiculous. And so they fall on my truck top. And so then I'll drive around the neighborhood, and they're up on top in my truck rattling around. So there's been many times where I'm like, what did I leave up there? I pull over. I'm like, oh, it's just chestnuts.
It's just
They're
the
just
chestnuts.
rattling around up there.
So speaking of tailgates being down, my best story ever, my youth pastor used to live across the street. He called me up and said, hey, can I get a ride to work today? I said, sure. I said, but we need your lawnmower down at the church. Can you just put it in the back of my pickup? And so he did, and we headed on down to the church. And we weren't too far from the church at a red light. And when I accelerated a little bit faster than I normally would. And the lawnmower was sitting, pointing front to back and not side to side. So as I accelerated, it rolled right on out of the back of the pickup, landed on its wheels, and then went by me on the driver's side and slammed into the front of a car that was waiting for their light to turn. And I was just horrified. I was like, hey, Bruce, that looks a lot like your
looks
lawnmower.
like your
That is your lawnmower. So we pulled over, and I went up to, it was a young teenage girl driving mom or dad's car. And I said, gosh, I feel so bad. And, I inspected the damage. It was all cosmetic to the front. Anyway, long story short, she said, please don't turn this in.
Just don't tell my mom.
don't do anything. I said, are you sure? I'll give you money. And when we have the insurance take care. No, please don't. So to this day, I don't know what the deal was, but I think she might have had mom or dad's car without permission.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Mom and Dad didn't know that
no.
story. So
Dad, the
if they're
oddest
watching,
thing happened. I got hit by a
Yeah.
lawnmower today.
Right? Just what are these dings in the bumper?
How did this get here?
Interesting.
That's a true story.
Yeah, that's funny. So, anyways, back at it. One cup of coffee in today, so we'll see how it goes on the podcast. Yeah.
Well, good thing Cole's Coffee is right over there.
Right next door. I know there's always plenty of coffee around. It's just a matter of getting it into the body. So Tanner, you're back on the podcast. You've been on many a time through the summer, but I was asking you, hey, have we covered your story as we have different people on, and you're not necessarily a guest, but have different people on, like how did you find Jesus? And so would love to help you help others by having you share your story of finding Jesus.
Yeah. Love to share. So, have you guys ever heard of that? Like, it's like a statistic. I don't know what proof there is behind it, but it's like every person that comes to know Jesus has like 7 interactions or something like that with Jesus before they actually accept Jesus. Like they hear the good news 7 times before they actually accept that. You heard that, Craig?
I have.
Yeah. I feel like that's a lot like my life, where I can definitely look back and be like, yeah, I had a lot of those little interactions or the seeds being planted in my head and in my heart about who Jesus was throughout my life. And then it finally got to the point where I was like, oh yeah, time to follow Jesus.
I thought it was everybody knew 6 people who knew Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, I was gonna say 6
Was that-
degrees is
That's a
separation.
different
What?
statistic.
You know 6 guys who know Kevin Bacon, I think is how that goes.
No, you're getting closer, but
I never heard of that.
You haven't heard of that?
No, you've got it mixed
do you know?
up.
Do you know who Kevin Bacon is?
Pretty sure I know.
Okay.
Pretty
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. If
Actually,
there was
the
a
way that
lineup,
goes,
Again, I'm not.
Kevin
yeah.
Bacon just has 6 friends. That's the point.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's
you
right.
know one of Kevin Bacon's 6 friends. I'm close. I think I'm not far off on that.
That's funny.
But hearing about Jesus multiple times
Yes.
before you're like,
Definitely.
okay, this makes sense, and I have a belief.
Yep.
You know, because it takes faith, which is in something unseen, and to believe in a God unseen. So
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
hearing it multiple times, and
So it started when me and my family, when we were living in Denver, lived there for the first 10 years of my life. And family's not a religious family at all, but they had me do this thing called Whiz Kids. It was like after school tutoring with a religious Christian aspect to it. So after school would
but it
do
was
like,
academic based, like whiz, like
basically.
smart,
Yeah.
sharp kids.
for the
it's
sharp
like
kids,
wizards.
me.
Like they had wands. and-
We did Harry Potter
Yeah.
stuff, and they're like, oh
no,
yeah,
my-
it was
my
like all
spells.
religions. We were like, just
Interesting.
It was. I'm just trying to. It was academic based.
Academic
but it
based,
was
yes.
by some people who are Jesus followers.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So after school, would go to their facility for about 2 hours. For an hour, it was like studying, getting one-on-one tutoring, so just extra help with school. And then for the last hour, half an hour of it, they would do a Bible lesson. And I don't remember anything about like the specifics. Like there wasn't a lesson that stuck out to me or anything like that. But I do remember every week going to having that Bible study time through that. So there was that. That was when we lived in Denver.
And that was when you were 10.
10.
9,
or-
10?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Or even younger.
Right.
7, 8. I did the Whiz Kids for a while.
Okay.
So there was that. And then second interaction with Jesus was when me and my family moved to Oregon. Had these friends that I would hang out with a lot every weekend, probably go spend the night at their house on Saturdays. So then obviously we'd wake up Sunday mornings, and they were a Christian family. So then after spending the night on Saturday, every Sunday, I'd go to church with them and would just hear about Jesus at their church. And I, again, don't really remember a whole lot. I do have one story I do remember. We took communion, and I didn't know what it was at all, and I just took it like everyone else was doing. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And when we get in the car after, I was like, what was that little snack we got?
Can we get a bigger size?
Can I get more of that? I was really hungry.
Can I supersize my drink? Or no. No.
Can I have seconds?
That's awesome.
Like, pass the plate around again. But yeah, so
That's funny.
I'm trying to flag him down. More hors d'oeuvres over here.
Wait,
What else
can
you
I
got?
get more of that bread?
Somebody else got another tray? What you got on that
Anyone
tray?
not like their juice? Can I have some?
Yep,
So-
that's perfect.
So there was that, and I think that was like the first time I started, I guess, asking questions about what the church or what Christianity was about. So there was that, and then fast forward to middle school, which is where I finally decided to start following Jesus. Me and my friends, 7th grade, we started going to a youth group to have fun on a Wednesday night, play dodgeball, play other fun games like capture the flag, whatever games they played. And then that was the main reason. We wanted to have fun on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
But then when it came to the Bible study lesson or the message, we just kind of sat in the back, didn't pay attention at all, kind of probably were the rowdy kids that made a lot of noise. So I did that for like probably a good year.
By the way, I just want to point out now, as a youth pastor, you've got guys like that in the back
Oh,
of
yeah.
the room.
Oh, yeah.
They're always in the back.
They're
They
always
are
in the
always
back.
in the
Unless
back.
the one guy's rowdy who likes the attention, so he's up front trying to get the
we got
spotlight.
a few of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle has taught me about demanding the respect of the students, so
Getting there.
Yeah.
Getting there.
Actually,
Yeah,
it's
when you-
commanding.
commanding.
And demand.
And demanding.
That's better
I
if
am
you command their
demanding.
respect.
Oh.
Anyway, go
and
ahead.
demand.
I'm trying to figure out the demanding part still. So if anybody gets a clue on that, let me know.
Yeah.
Demand your
I
respect.
demand you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried that in the early years of my marriage. I didn't work so good.
Yeah. It doesn't work. It doesn't
Demanding
work.
respect's kind of a bad strategy.
Mm.
It
Okay,
doesn't
well,
work on anybody's heart to demand their heart to be changed or to be shifted.
Well,
you know?
that's why Jesus doesn't demand that we follow him. He invites us and woos us and does everything he can to help us make that choice. But he wants it to be our choice, not something that we're kind of forced into.
Right.
Mhm.
But anyway, back to
That's
your
what
story.
Back to my story.
Love requires that free will choice.
Exactly.
So you're getting
you're in the
the
back.
message
So
of
I'm in the
Jesus
back,
for a year
kinda
or more.
Like, yeah, just listening
playing
in,
games
not
and checking
paying
out
attention.
girls.
Yeah. Well, didn't really check out any girls there.
Not yet.
Not
No.
yet. Not. No.
You weren't there, or there weren't good enough girls there.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. I don't know. But yeah, so it was just sitting in the back, kind of listening here or there, but again, not really paying attention. And then there was one night where something just kind of clicked in my head, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start listening. I want to like pay attention during the message, and I want to hear what this guy's talking about. So just started listening more about what he was talking about for Jesus, who Jesus was, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
There was one night I even remember saying like, he was like, "Hey, does someone want to read this passage?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll read it." So I was like, was just trying to get more involved, and I wanted to hear more about who Jesus was, and then I started going to this other youth group with a lot of my my friends back home who are still like my best friends today, and was again just like listening in, asking questions, trying to figure out who Jesus was. And there was one night where the youth pastor did kind of a youth altar call kind of thing, where it was just like, everyone, close your eyes, bow your heads, I just want to ask a few questions, and you can respond however you want. And it was like, raise your hand if you don't have a relationship with Jesus. I was like, oh, I raised my hand, and then he went through the thing. Raise your hand if you've walked away from Jesus, all that stuff. But I remember when I raised my hand saying like, oh yeah, I don't know who Jesus is, and I don't have a relationship with him. There was something like, you know what, it's time to just jump in. I'm going to do it. I'm going to start following this Jesus guy, and we're going to see where this goes. So then that night, me and another buddy who also wanted to accept Jesus, we went to a leader, and that leader prayed with us, and that was when I started following Jesus, when I accepted him in my life. And
That's so good.
so
Such a great
it's just
story.
been all,
Just through friends inviting you and exposing you to the good news, and
yeah.
that God's obviously at work in your heart. Do you remember anything more specifically about that moment, about your curiosity about Jesus, or an aspect where you're like, oh, that sounds good, I want in on that, or anything in that moment? I mean, I know that's a younger age, and for a lot of us, it's just in our conscience where we're going, oh, this is the right thing to do, and I know it's the right thing to do because it's God at work in me. But was there anything like theme-wise or topic-wise or freedom or grace or family or, I mean, just the different aspects of what it means to follow Jesus that was intriguing to you during that season?
I think it was probably, when I think back, hearing about Jesus giving me a life of purpose and direction. I mean, like most middle schoolers, didn't know what I wanted to do at all with my life. I wasn't sure where I was going. And I guess the friends I was hanging out with before were not, if I kept following, it wasn't going to be a good direction for sure. It wasn't going to, the outcome of hanging out with them throughout high school, and probably wouldn't have been good. So I think hearing about Jesus giving me, Jesus wanting to give me a life that was full of purpose and direction and hope and like joy and peace was like, yeah, I want in on that. I want a good life.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'm going to follow Jesus.
Wow. Yeah. Very, very appealing to all of us.
Yeah.
Have that fulfillment of purpose, and we're doing something significant and even something greater than ourselves, part of a bigger story. We're all drawn to that. And so that's definitely something that a lot of us are, going, hey, that sounds really awesome. I'm in on that.
Yeah. And after I started following Jesus, I did everything I could to, I guess, try and live into that purpose. Like I would try and help out with my middle school's FCA group, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, just like helping out there, trying to help other people hear about Jesus. Got super involved with the youth group in terms of, just like inviting friends and trying to give them a place where they could we can hear about Jesus too. Towards the end of high school was like a student leader, so just taking more charge in the youth group. Did everything I could to live into that purpose that Jesus had given me.
Cool.
That's great.
Yeah. And you're kind of all in guy when you're doing something. You're like, oh, we're doing it. We're doing it. Not like, kind of do it once in a while.
No.
But yeah,
when we're doing it, we're doing it.
We're doing it. So you found Jesus, go, I'm in. Once
Full
I'm in,
send, right?
Yep.
let's go. With lots of energy and lots of people around.
That's right.
Microphone.
I think it was the couch actually.
Was it?
Maybe.
Anyways,
I think it's your microphone.
I think so.
I think it might not have been either one of those.
Could have been. Could have been. Anyways, let's move along here. So we kind of left off in John chapter 12, this longer section we've been in for a few weeks with Jesus just making his royal entrance into the city of Jerusalem and his presence be known, people celebrating him like they should, like the king, and him going, hey, I'm the light. Life is in the light. I'm going to be here just a little bit longer, so jump on board. Jump on board, Tanner. All in right now.
All in
This is
right
the
now.
good time to go. Put your trust in the light while you have it so that you may become sons of the light is kind of our last thought. We left off on verse 36. And then it said, when he'd finished speaking, Jesus left and hid himself from them. I'm always like, Jedi moves. That's awesome, Jesus. Way to go. That's what
This
I
is
think
not
of.
the Messiah you're looking for.
That's right. He just slips through a crowd and he just disappears. Like hid from himself. Like, I'm always curious on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like went out of town, somebody else's house, or went like fourth or fifth dimension on us.
He was hiding behind the door.
He could have been. Like he could
just
have been
hid under the
somewhere.
table.
He's like,
Under the table.
Where's Jesus? He's out on a rock. Or he hid himself. He was physically there, but people weren't aware of him. which we have later when he's the resurrected Christ.
It's
and,
true.
And
On the
Mary
road to
thinks
Emmaus
he's
and
the
stuff.
gardener, road to Emmaus.
Yep.
And they're like, there's something different about this dude. I can't put my finger on it till they are aware. So like he was there with them, but spiritually like hid himself with like a cloaking device of some kind, or he was in fourth, fifth dimension, so you couldn't see him. I don't know. I just have
Maybe.
all this stuff that rolls around.
Yeah.
Does yours? What
Just
is-
put it on the list of things to ask him someday. So,
And the
how
main-
did that work? Like,
the main
what
point is
going
he was
on
in
there?
charge of the timing of everything.
Yes. Mhm.
He was in charge of laying down his own life. Nobody took it from him. Nobody actually killed Jesus. He sacrificed himself. And he was always in charge of the timeline and the crowds and the people and the stuff around him. But anyways, I just am curious about those kind of moments. Like, oh, he slipped out. He hid himself. But then we have this interesting and kind of tricky to understand section, I think, and can be a thing where it can turn people off from following Jesus or
Yeah.
just kind of confuse you. But let's just dive into it here.
I know where we're going because
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the text, but let's not miss verse 37.
Okay.
But though he had performed so many signs before them, yet they were not believing in him. And that's just very interesting to me. It's a commentary on human nature. We have the same theme that comes up in the story of Lazarus and the rich man. And the rich man is like, oh, Abraham, send somebody back and tell them about what's going on. And Abraham says, no, even if they have somebody rise from the dead, they're still not going to believe. In other words, it's not signs and miracles and wonders, things that wow you, that somehow put you over the edge, that are the tipping point for you believing. Jesus had done, how many more signs and wonders and miracles do they need? At this point, Jesus has done all kinds of stuff, and the word has spread wildly, and yet these people are still not believing. It was right in front of them, before their eyes. It's not just stories they heard.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody, but there were many that, they'd seen it all, still weren't believing. And it goes to the question of what really is the foundation of our faith. I don't believe in Jesus because he did miracles. I believe in Jesus because of the empty tomb.
Yeah, and those things help, though, the miraculous and
They
the
help.
Yeah.
seeing of the signs and the wonders. And when we see that today, where sometimes we don't give God enough credit for something that's going on, it's awesome and it's miraculous. And we see real, genuine life change and heart change and God's provision and, all that kind of stuff. It definitely helps to go, wow, something is supernatural. There is something greater than the natural. I don't understand it. I don't got a full grasp on it. But it isn't the ultimate, Craig, to your point. It isn't the thing that
It's
we
not the thing.
base our faith on. It's
Right.
not the essence of Jesus is like, oh, give me another circus trick. Give me another, bless me again. Give me another thing, another item, then I'll really believe. Like, no,
Yeah.
one more, just one more. Go ahead. It's not how it works. So there was always this mixed crowd because many did believe and many didn't, and there was always this mixed crowd. But let's dive into it. And see.
And I think this is a good. We talked about this a few weeks ago. We've talked about this multiple times, but when Trevor was here, and then the week before that, and how we kind of, compiled all of this idea from Old Testament and the prophecies about who Jesus was and the fulfillment of what he's doing. So I think it's interesting when we read texts like this, where it's quoting Isaiah, who is an Old Testament prophet, going, how does that fit with this? And Jesus with way back then, and we have these words from this prophet who spoke them way before Jesus even came on the scene. And now John is saying, hey, these two things are related. When Isaiah said this, and now this that I'm seeing with my own eyes happening, it was in reference to what Isaiah was prophesying from God about Jesus and bringing those two worlds together. And we've talked about that from the ideas of the Passover
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. And then we get into what he's actually saying, Scott, where you say it could be messy, confusing, hard to understand.
Yeah. So how do you guys understand this? What I'm talking about is verse 38 through 41.
So as we dive in, let's also remember that this is all tied to verse 37.
Yeah, their unbelief.
Right.
Yes.
So, in fact, often the translators will add words to help clarify meaning. And so in the new, whatever I've got here, New American Standard, this is supplied at the beginning of verse 38. This was to fulfill the word of Isaiah the prophet. What was? The fact that he did miracles right in front of their eyes and they still didn't believe.
Still didn't believe.
Yeah.
So he's showing them, and they're like, oh, we would believe, and then they're not. So in Isaiah says, hey, verse 38, Lord, who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For this reason they could not believe, because as Isaiah says elsewhere, he has blinded their eyes and deadened their hearts, so they can neither see with their eyes, nor understand with their hearts, nor turn, and I would heal them. Isaiah said this because he saw Jesus' glory and spoke about him. So I think that's one of those really like speed bumpy, roadblocky, even maybe a deterrent going, wait, who's the he? God? God has blinded their eyes and deadened their hearts, so they can neither see and they don't understand, and so they can't turn to God? So is God manipulating and in control of our hearts, and we can't choose to find him and see him and follow him? Is he somehow controlling us to like believe or not believe, and go to heaven or not go to hell, and it's all God, just kind of a puppet master? You could read that and come away with that kind of a conclusion just from this one small section. So
Right.
I'll help people as they're listening, like how do we navigate that? How do we understand that?
So Paul also addresses this in Romans in that section 9, 10, and 11. He talks about the fact that he's the potter and we're the clay. And one of the things we need to keep in mind as we dive into this is God can do whatever he wants to. He's not accountable to us. He doesn't have to explain to us why he does what he does. And that's not the only thing that we need to understand, but I think it's something we sometimes forget in our insistence on it making sense to us. Like, help me make sense of this. Well, what if it never makes sense to you? Is God under obligation to have everything make sense to us? And the answer is no. He can do whatever he wants to.
I always say that if I understood everything that God was doing and how God did, like that'd be a pretty small God if my
Yep.
tiny little brain could understand it, right?
Great
Like
point.
if God was just as big as you could understand, like we'd be boxing up God hardcore. I'm too dumb to understand all of God, right? Like if you want, like I always say, like if and to understand even like why would God have done it that way? Like I would have done it differently, which we say that all the time. Like God, I'm like, yeah, but if I was running the world, we'd be in a whole lot worse shape than we are right now, right? Like,
Right.
And so, I mean, I think you point to that in a really biblical way, but also a really practical way. Like, I don't understand a lot of what God does, but to me, sometimes that's freeing and going, God, I'm glad that you're bigger than me. I'm glad that you're smarter than me. I'm glad that you're more infinite than me. And I understand how that can be frustrating and hard to wrestle with, but also so freeing and going, thank you, God, for being that big. And I'm humbling myself before you and trusting that you do know what's right.
Yeah.
There's kind of two
Which-
different places that I turn to. Oh,
Which
go
is
ahead.
still, I'll push back a little bit. I get it with the sovereignty of God. Is like absolutely, like there's stuff that God's doing, his character, who he is, everything about him, like we're not going to fully understand. And there's definitely faith, which is faith is in things unseen that you don't fully comprehend, which all of us are good on. And we talk about love, forgiveness, grace. You're like, I don't know how God's forgiveness goes this far and this wide and this deep, but I'm in on it. Or the love of God, and I don't understand how much he loves them. Then we come to something like this. It's one of those things people go, oh, well, I need to understand this because this sounds like
Exactly.
I'm okay with the positive, quote unquote, positive things about God, but like this sounds pretty negative, and like
No,
so I'm just helping.
Yeah,
as
for me,
listeners
and that's
would
where I
push
came
back.
to that. I mean, for me, a lot of it, and specifically in reading through the Old Testament and seeing some of the stuff, and I go, like, I think that's wrong. I think that's weird. Like, I'm speaking more towards the negative stuff
Yeah.
because that's the harder stuff to follow for me. But again, in a place where I go, I just have to come to a place where I trust that God is smarter than me. And so for this specifically, there's two
Yeah.
things that I think about. The first one I think about Pharaoh and this idea that we talk about God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And then one of the places that I look to is Romans 1, Romans 1:24. I think about these ideas because
What does that say?
yeah, I'm going to read it.
Oh, you got it.
In talking through these ideas of God hardening people's heart or God doing these things, this is the way Paul puts it when he talks about God giving them over to their sinful desires. And I think there's two different ways that we can look at it. It's like, oh, God caused them or pushed them into this sinfulness or hardened their hearts or made them do these things. And the way that the text reads is that because of their actions, because of their unbelief, because of their sin, God let them deal with the consequences. God didn't cause these things. So I'll read it for you.
Yep.
In verse 24, I'll start in verse 23 because it kind of sets it up. And instead of worshiping in the glorious, ever-living God, they worshipped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. And that's just kind of the end of the list. That there's all this sinful behavior. And verse 24, so God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their heart desires. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded the truth about God for a lie. So they worshipped and served the things God created instead of the Creator himself, who is worthy of eternal praise. Amen. So some translations say God abandoned them. God gave them over to their desires. God let them do what they want, or even harder than that. It's like God pushed them into those things. It's like God was hardening their hearts. God was giving them over to these sinful desires. Like why didn't? And the way that I understand it, and the way I look at that is, because God is supreme, because God knows all things, because God understands the beginning, the end, and the middle, he understands what they're doing, and because of their choices and their sinful desires and their sinful things, it led to these things, and God's not going to force them, again, I think like you said earlier, into this loving relationship and say, no, I'm going to control you and not let you do these. And so because of their decisions, because of their choices, they're given over into these sinful, selfish, terrible things that end in all this bad things. And so as I read a passage like, well, God hardened their hearts and God closed up their eyes, to me, the way that I understand the reading of those things is it's not going, I'm going to make you not believe.
Right.
I'm going to make it so you can't see. But God understanding, they're not believing and they're not seeing.
They've had an opportunity.
Absolutely. They've seen these miracles. Again, if we go back to the context of John, they're witnessing and seeing these things that are happening.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that God's going, shut your eyes, you can't see that, you're dumb, you're ignorant to it.
Right.
It's that because of their choices and their things, they're living into the consequences of hardening their hearts,
right,
and having
One of
eyes that
the fundamental issues that we're wrestling with here is the reality of human free will. And it's important for us to understand that one of the most sacred things that is characteristic of the human existence, our experience as human beings, is our free will. It's one of the things that it means to be created in God's image, and it is one of the things that's right at the heart of our relationship with Him. It's a relationship by choice, and our free will is something that is sacred, and God gave it to us and respects it and protects it, and is not ever going to override it. But having said that, I think what we're discussing here might be said this way, that God doesn't override our free will, but He does reinforce it.
Yeah.
Once we make choices, then He says, all right, well, that's your choice. Let's go with that. And then He starts, and then He has a response, which He's, as God, entitled to have. He'll have a response, say, well, you've already hardened your heart. I'm just going to continue to do what it is apparently that you want to do, and I'm going to harden your heart also.
Right. So, but people always have that opportunity, I believe. Like you're saying, someone could hear that, like, oh, okay, well, this is your bed. You're going to lie in it, for the rest of your life. You've made a choice. I think there's always that opportunity, because now we're also talking about like Kyle, you brought up the character of God. Is God loving and gracious and merciful, or is it like choose now and then you're screwed, buddy? Pick now, left or right, which is the correct way.
Yeah, but
So-
even in this text, we see that again. I think understanding what's going on. So it's not saying like all these people were questioning or not believing or basically just not believing that Jesus was. So God's like shut them off and was like,
Right.
well, there's your choice, you're done. But I mean, look at verse 42. Many people did believe in Him, however, including some of the Jewish believers. So it's not like God was like, oh, too bad, y'all lose, you didn't pass the test, you get an F, see you later.
Yeah. And
But here's an illustration, like all of the illustrations, it breaks down. But
Right.
I'm picturing somebody with their dog on a long leash, and they're going along on a walk, and then the dog just decides that it doesn't want to be on the leash anymore, and it doesn't want to be with the master anymore, and it wants to go run and do whatever. Maybe it saw another dog or whatever, and so that dog is tugging at the leash and pulling, and because it's a big dog, it's pulling the master, and he's having all he can do to hang on to him. And finally, the master just says, all right, you're so insistent on this. This is what you're choosing. And he just lets go of the leash. Now, then the dog is going to do what? What he's been wanting to do, because the leash is no longer holding him back. to your point, Scott, does the dog have the option at some point to change his mind and go running back to the master and drag his leash along with him? Absolutely. There's always the option to do that. But what I think when God gives them over, he's letting go of the leash. He's saying, I'm not gonna try and guide you and direct you another direction. You're choosing to do this, I'm gonna let you go. It's kind of like the prodigal son. The father didn't go chase after him, he just let him go. And
Yeah.
in the hopes that he would change his mind, which he eventually did.
Yeah, because you can't control anybody's heart. You can't demand. What are we doing?
Bingo.
We're demanding. So back to the character of God and trying to zoom out on this situation, and then that way make sure we have right context. 2 Peter, so Peter, one of Jesus' followers, 2 Peter 3 says this, but don't forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. For me, that just speaks to God does not live in and exist in time as I understand it. His view and ability to intersect with time is not the same as me.
Absolutely
And
right.
it's so weird and hard to get my brain wrapped around because God is perfect. He sees all things. He's the beginning and the end. There's no constraints of like, I have no idea what's going to happen in the future. He doesn't live in the future or the past or the present because he's outside of that concept of time. So he is appropriately able to judge someone's heart and carry out some sort of judgment instantly on a person because he doesn't. We come with this, but wait, give this guy some more time. He's got some years. He could figure it out or choose something different.
And God's able to look down.
God already sees all of
through
that
what to us
simultaneously.
is future, and like, oh yeah, there are going to be 27 more opportunities, and they're still going to decline.
Yeah, exactly. And so
That's great. I think that helps add context to what I was trying to say that you said better, even in Romans, in that
Yeah.
understanding of like, well, wait, they made one mistake and God gave them. No, it's understanding again God's perspective of a much bigger picture than we're even capable of understanding.
And to finish verse 9, this thought of the character of God, the Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some has understood slowness. Like for us, time, is it slow?
what you understand, yeah.
We think God's slow. Timing is slow. Oh, but then we try to comfort ourselves with it. He's always on time. He's got a stopwatch and he never misses. Like,
Yep.
no, he's not even on a time. He is way outside of time. He doesn't this. And so just to finish this, the character of God, he is patient with you, every single one of us. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish.
Right.
He does not want anyone to have a hardened heart or blind eyes. He's doing the miracles. He came. He humbled himself.
Right.
He said, look over here. I'm God. I'm life. I'm the light. I am the resurrection. I'm the bread of life. I'm the living water. He's saying all this stuff. He's saying, here. I don't want you to be separate. You got a problem? I'm the solution. He wants everyone to come to repentance, everyone to come to acknowledge it. But then, unfortunately, there's people who just, because love requires a free choice, going to go, I'm choosing something else. And Tanner, like your story, they're hearing multiple times, 4, 5, 6, 7, 100 times about God and life is in the light and come to Christ and eternal life and forgiveness of sin. And there's no other way. He's the way, the truth, and life. And then they're like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're like, that sounds pretty rough. It is rough. That's why you should come to Jesus. So you don't have this existence. Because we can get lost up in this theology debate, and then, but we make it personal. Like, well, are you asking this question? Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes we get hung up on theological debates too much and hypothetical, theoretical. But like, no, Kyle, are you asking it? God, have you hardened my heart and I can't see you? Like, put it on a personal level. It kind of sounds silly a little bit because, like, well, if you're asking that question, probably not of yourself. You're going, God, I see you. I believe in you. There should be no worry or fear that you
Right.
don't have a relationship with God because you do have one. And you put your faith in him.
But again, I appreciate you referencing at the beginning that this might be a hurdle to people and a misunderstanding of God's
Yeah.
character of going, well, God's already picking and choosing already. He's already said, your heart's hard. Oh, you're good enough, right? Like here, Isaiah said it and Jesus fulfilled it. God hardened some people's hearts and made it so they couldn't believe. So no matter how hard I try, God's already decided for me that my heart was going to be hard or I couldn't see, right? And so understanding that hurdle, and then that's where I think this theological hypothetical debate even is like, no, like let's make it personal. Like, are you actually curious and considering that? And like, I don't think your heart's hard then. I don't think your blind eyes, like you're open, you're seeing, you're exploring. So like even the fact that we have the ability to do that, I think is proving like against that argument that would say, oh no, like You know, so again, living in the reality and understanding it in the broader context of who God is and how God's revealing Himself to people in this time and to us today. Like, I think the very practical part of that, like, disproves that argument or argues against it. Like, no, like let's look at what's actually happening, and your ability to even ask that question, to be curious and to open your eyes and look around, even as a middle schooler, right, is showing that, like, no, you don't have a hard heart and blind eyes,
Right.
and that's not how God works.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tanner? Give you an opportunity here. It's a pretty hefty thing here with. Yeah, can we just choose God and all the time, anytime?
Well, I mean, the biggest point of, like, I think Craig hit it when he first brought up our free will. Like, that's pivotal. That's so important to our relationship with Jesus. Like, if we didn't have free will, then it wouldn't be a relationship, because we'd just be kind of like robots, and
Yeah.
it wouldn't be that relationship at all. There would be no love. We'd just be mindless robots.
Yeah.
We're actually in the young adults group. We've been going through Romans for the last few weeks, and last night we were actually looking at Romans 11 a little bit, and it was just so cool, like, for us to be able to have that conversation. It was like, okay, well, if God is picking and choosing, then, like, how can God be love? How can God be full of love and compassion and mercy if He's just picking and choosing? Or, we
And
had a lot
Romans
just-
11 is kind of, really
very
talks about
confusing.
the Israelites and the Jewish nation and the special relationship that God has with them, and how He chose them as a people group for a certain time and really defined season. And I don't understand all of what that means.
No.
And 9 through 11 there, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's some unique people, but the good news is available to anybody, anytime. And
Right.
Jesus didn't come to save a select group of people. He said God gave His only Son so that just a few people,
Yeah.
the select special ones that kind of know about Him, would come to Him.
Yeah.
Like, no, to save the entire world.
Yeah, verse 46, right? Like, I have come as light to shine in this dark world so that all,
Bingo.
A-L-L, that's everyone,
Yo, that's all, y'all.
all who put their trust in me will no longer remain in the dark.
Yeah.
Yep.
I got a solution to the darkness, and it's for everyone,
Everyone.
not
Yep.
that one and that one. Oh, your
Yeah.
heart's hard. I'm hardening your heart, or I'm making you, so you get to stay in the dark. I don't like you very much. You're kind of annoying, right? You smell
Yep.
bad. No, Jesus is like, everybody, all who receive me can have the prescription, the light that shines and defeats the darkness.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Tanner.
I was going to in Romans 10 and 11, Paul is going on, and he's saying, like, he's talking about how the Jewish people, they haven't accepted God. They ran away. They're the ones that they killed Jesus. They're the ones who have not been following God. But then the start of verse 11 asks, then, did God reject His people? By no means. So
Yeah.
God is never rejecting us. He's always there and wanting us to come back into relationship with Him. That option is always available for us to say, I've been living a life of sin. I've messed up. I need to go back to Jesus. There's always that option for us.
Yeah. There's always this tension when we have these conversations, like, oh, have we just always been talking in the context like it's all on God? It's God's problem. It's God's issue. Like, let's all raise our hand going, who gets to choose? Who has the free will? Oh, that's us.
That's us.
Like, choose Jesus.
Yep.
Choose the light. We have these conversations all the time. God's going, oh, no, it's your move, buddy.
Yeah.
It's your move.
And
Like,
that
He's
goes
not
right to-
answering my prayer. No,
that-
He did. He said, go to work. That's where the money comes from, or whatever the prayer is. And you're like, no, I'm just sitting around waiting. It's
Yeah.
balls in God's court. God's like, nah, over to you.
Over to you.
Service to you, buddy.
Yeah, the next move is yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes to the heart of why we even do this Find and Follow
Believe.
podcast. We're just trying to help people make that choice
Yeah.
because they do have a choice to find a relationship in Christ and follow Him.
That
Yeah.
reminds me of a quote from, I don't know,
Tommy Boy.
some old apostolic father.
Okay.
Super. So it was a really old
Smart
guy.
old dude.
I forget who it was, but it was pray and believe as though it's up to Jesus, which it is, but work as though it's up to you. Like, I think whenever I think of that quote, I always think it's the perfect balance between all of our faith is in Jesus, and we are putting all of our trust and hope in Him, but we're still going to go out and we're going to do everything in our own power to have, I guess, answer our own prayers, to participate in the work that Jesus is doing here on earth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we,
You know, I
With
started,
also with the caveat of understanding that when I'm working in my own strength, I got the power of the Holy Spirit, right?
Yes.
yeah.
Like, 'cause that's where I think it falls short a little bit. Like, oh, well, I believe in Jesus, but then I just got a nose to the ground. Like, for me, I go, like, I believe, like, Jesus is going to do it through me. Like, He's going to help me. Like, I don't have to just do it in my own power. Like, if I just had to be the best husband in my own power, I would fail. I'd be a terrible husband. I mean, like, I fail all the time. But, like, with Jesus and the whole power of the Holy Spirit, like, I can love my wife the way He's created me to love my wife. And without it, I'm going to fail, right? Like, we talk about it. I'm not a dad, but as a dad, right, you're like, man, I would fail at loving my kids well in my own flesh.
yeah.
And so I got to work at it, and I got to do it. But I also got to trust in that power of the Holy Spirit to help me work in it, which is just a good part of that to remember.
Absolutely. It's together, always.
Yep.
So I hope that our listeners have gotten some help in understanding this whole concept and what Isaiah's referring to and what Paul addressed in Romans and what John is getting at when he quotes Isaiah here in John chapter 12. But again, I would just remind us at a certain point, as much as we might be able to understand aspects of it and get a little bit of a handle on it that's fairly satisfying, at least for now, we come to the same conclusion eventually as Paul did in Romans 11. At the end of Romans 11, after he's gone through this 3-chapter long unpacking of this idea of human free will and God's sovereignty, I mean, he spent a lot of time on it. He just finally says in verse 33, "Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and unfathomable his ways. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who became his counselor?" Like, who did God ask for advice? Or who was first given to him that it might be paid back to him again? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. And Paul's just saying, basically, I just have to throw my hands up and realize at a certain point, I just can't comprehend this. And that's the point we made earlier. And Paul's he's no slouch. He's a brilliant guy, well-educated. And even Peter makes a comment about his vocabulary being greater than his own as a fisherman. Peter is drawing that comparison. So he's a smart guy, but he's just saying, there's a limit to my ability to comprehend God. He's just amazing, and he's just incomprehensible. At a certain point, I just praise him that he's so smart and so wise and beyond me.
Right. And we're thankful for that because that means
Very
he can do the salvation and the resurrection and the beat death and pay for sin that we can't. And so that's why we love that our brains run out and go, hey, we're not God, he is. We're going to do our best to understand, but at a certain point we run out and we're thankful that we're not God and he is, and that Jesus is the life and he is the light, and that we came out of darkness and we're part of the resurrection. So we'll end on that note. I'm going to go track down another cup of coffee, and maybe if you guys need one too, you do the same. But thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
You can help people find and follow Jesus by subscribing to the podcast, sharing it with some friends, and leaving a review so it's easier for others to find it.